All right, guys, what's happening? Sean Ames here from Heart of America FPV, and our Freedom Spec season is upon us. And boy, this year we've got a doozy. I'm recording this May 11th. We're gonna announce the season on Monday, May 15th. So keep your eyes peeled if it's prior to that, but I'm stoked. Ahead of the season, I just wanted to make a quick video to show you what the software setup side of getting this year's Freedom Spec stuff ready to rock is. So the cool thing is everything is baked right into Betaflight proper. You do need the most recent Betaflight configurator. This is 10.9.0. Getting started, if you already have a quad that's set up, I suggest you come in here and you do a dump, maybe a diff. Let's do both here. So copy to clipboard. So there's the dump. I'm also going to do a diff, clear output data, and then do a diff. If you don't know a diff and a dump is like every setting on the flight controller. A diff is just the settings that are different, thus the term diff. Diff is just the settings that are different. And so, for instance, I'm currently already on the CAC firmware. We'll get to that in a second. But just for you guys out there, let's say you're on 4.3. You're not on 4.4 yet. Now, if you're on 4.4.1, 4.4.2, 4.4.0, you're probably good to go just to completely just copy your dump and paste it right on your new quad. But if you're coming from an older version, like 4.3 or earlier, I like to delete everything that has to do with like the tune. So I would leave, obviously my name. The serial setup is like which pad you have your RX soldered to, your channel mapping for your radio, your aux switches. I leave all of that. Now I do go in here and I delete all of this except for the OSD elements under master. So I leave everything that's OSD. We can leave debug mode, video mode. We can leave, I like to delete this just in case. And then these total arm times and stuff, the stats, we'll leave that because that's the special stuff from this quad. And if you don't know what this is, the extra total CACs and CAC time, that's something you're gonna have after you finish this here tutorial. So if you don't know, inside of Avon's CAC firmware, before it even had Infinity's RPM stuff on it, you could go in and you could edit your warnings on your quad. So like for me, if my FC's getting hot, it says please hurry. If I'm doing turtle mode, it says come on man. When my battery's low, instead of saying low battery, it says I think I can. And when I'm armed, it says it's alive. So that's just some fun stuff I do. So I definitely want to go in here and delete all of the tuning settings here, all the PIDs, everything. Yeah, so pretty much all of profile 0 is gone, and then I leave my rate profile stuff. So essentially now I have a diff that is the personalization. Yeah, so this diff now is just the personalization of this quad. It's got my arm switches, it's got which pad I'm soldered to for my receiver, it's got my rates, and it's got my OSD elements all in there. So anyway, that's kind of an aside. That's not what this video is about. Fast forward if you didn't like it. Once I have that, then you can come back over here to the CLI. And this is the way I do this. There's probably a lot of different ways to do it, but I like to type BL, stands for bootloader. Click it, and it's going to put my flight controller into bootloader mode. Now I can click update firmware, and this is what's exciting. Check this out, guys. Under the first drop down, development, and choose board. Just want to make sure I got the right one cooking there. There we go. And then here, this is what's awesome. So now, instead of having to do anything under the select commit down here, you don't. You just got to select 4.4.1 CAC. All you got to do now. Apparently this quad I had set up prior to this being officially in here. So before we had to do 4.4.2 CAC. Now it's just 4.4.1 CAC, special release. Everything else from here on out is just like normal Betaflight. So just like normal, you hit load firmware online. Someone else has already done this one, so it was super fast. Then flash the firmware. Am I sure? It's experimental. Yes. So now that it's done, you can do all the normal stuff. You definitely always want to apply custom defaults. That's important. So now that that's done, I can come over here. So this is all my customizations, but it doesn't have any of the tune settings. And paste this down. Don't forget to hit save and enter. There we go. Now we're in. Now, for my tune personally, I always just do the Karate Race 6S 5-inch, Ghost 250, pick it, agree, and save and reboot. Cool beans. On setup, let's just make sure that the board configuration is right. I deleted that, but apparently it was right to start. So board configuration is good to go. So this quad is set up. Now for the RPM limiter, you can do this in CLI, but this is the hard way and it's pretty easy. So that's how awesome this is. So let's get RPM limiter. The RPM limiter is currently off. To do Freedom Spec, you have to turn that on. You don't have to do any of this in CLI. We'll do this in a minute in the OSD. It's way easier. It's defaulted off, so you'll want to set that to on. And then the RPM limiter PIDs, we leave those alone. And then your real KV for our spec, we're all running the same motor, so that's 1960. Okay, this is where I messed up. You have to do get RPM limit, not limiter, and that shows you the RPM limit is 180. Now this is a bit of a bug, I would say. 180, that actually stands for 18,000 RPMs, which is a little confusing. I almost wish it was like 18,000, but 180, the first two digits are the thousands, right? So it'd be like 18,000. If you were 185, it'd be 18,500. Standard Freedom Spec is considered to be 18,000 RPMs. But this year we are saying that there could be events, that doesn't mean that there will, but there could be events that do Freedom Spec as slow as 16,000 RPMs or as fast as 22,000 RPMs. And if you haven't played with the RPM limiter, it is glorious. I suggest it. I've been running it on all my open class stuff. It's essentially like VBAT SAG compensation on steroids. So it makes sure that you're never going to go faster than a set RPM. And I absolutely love it. I'm just showing you, this is where you can find, if you go get RPM limit in the CLI, this is where you can get these settings. You'd have to turn it on and then make sure that this is to 180. So let me go ahead and unplug this, plug it into a LiPo battery. We will have a look-see at the new OSD and how awesome it is. All right. Hey, everybody, here we are. We are in the quadcopter now, and you enter the OSD just like normal. And this is one of the coolest things Avon has ever made. It's like the quick menu for Betaflight here, and it's super duper cool. So in the quick menu, like let's assume that RPM limiting didn't even exist. You could set your throttle limit here in the quick limit or in the quick menu. You could set a motor output limit in the quick menu. I think this is the real reason he did it, was so you could force cells in the quick menu, because so many people, would like overcharge and their quad would think they were on 7S and flash low battery the whole time, and that was annoying to Avon. So you can do that. And if you have your VTX table set up, I don't use VTX tables because I love Ghost, but your VTX settings would also be in this menu. Finally, you can go to the full, Betaflight OSD here. So that is that. In regards to the Freedom Spec season this year, RPM limiting, to set it up, you flashed it, everything works. Now to set it up, you would just go into the RPM limit, turn active to yes, and then you would set the RPM to the proper RPM for the event. And like I said, standard Freedom Spec is considered to be 18,000 RPMs, but we could see a range of 16,000 to 22,000 at an event. That would be for the entire event, more than likely. You won't see it change necessarily like heat to heat. Let's say the track is a certain style of track, and we think that faster speed would be more enjoyable, then we'll do that. If we feel like maybe it's a really, really long track and you can't get 3 laps, which that seems absurd on traditional Freedom Spec, then we might slow it down to 16,000, which would be really slow. One thing to keep in mind, I'll go ahead and I'm going to set this up for an open class quad because we are still in GQ season. I've been running 26,000. Related to all of this, another thing that Avon recently told me he's working on, see my OSD element there, it's getting warm. One thing that Avon is working on with the CAC firmware is that prior to arming, hopefully someday we'll put up your RPM limit settings on the screen prior to you arming. That way the race director can see that you're passing spec check. For now, if we don't get this fixed prior to actual Freedom Spec races happening, what we required at Mayhem and worked really, really well was prior to the arming period, you would go to your quick menu and your RPM limit and just have this on screen so they can see it. Once the race director sees that you're legit, obviously I would not be legit because I'm at 26,000 RPMs, but once the race director sees that you're legit, you're set up properly, then you can close it and get ready for arming. So that's what the plan is if we don't get this changed. But ideally, like I said, Avon told me just a couple nights ago that he's planning to do a version of the CAC firmware prior to arming. It'll just have whether or not Freedom Spec settings are appropriately set up right there, visible in this OSD. So guys, I hope this was helpful to you. I'm super stoked about the season. Like I said, keep your eyes peeled. We've got a bunch of amazing sponsors. It's going to be a phenomenal season. So with that said, if you're needing some Freedom Spec gear, we are running the heads up motor and the heads up prop this year. If you need to get your hands on some of those, there is an affiliate link in the description of this video. It'd mean a lot to me if you used it, and we will catch you next time on Heart of America FPV. Later.